morning. Yes, good
It's been a
morning.
morning here in Southern California between appointments and jackhammers and everything else, but we're here.
We're here. We made it. Thank you for being patient with us. Um, so let's get jump into it with our usual intro here. I'm Dr. Annalisa Durr. This is Goddess Matters. Today we're talking about reflections on my recent pilgrimage that I led to the south of France to Mary Magdalene's sacred sites there. And I'm here with my co-hostess with the mostest, Dr. A. Hello, Dr. A.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning.
So I think we can just jump in, oh wait, before we do that, the most important part is to remind everybody to please like this video, to please share, to please leave a comment. We're going to be in the live chats. We're going to be good about the live chat today.
Yes,
So
yes. I just said good morning to everybody. So yeah,
yeah,
hopefully people will log in and say hi.
please ask us questions because we're going to be diligent about being in the chat.
Yep.
Um, okay, so where should we begin? What is the most
I
pressing
think
question?
yeah, I think the thing that it's always good like what is it? The Sound of Music. Let's start at the very beginning, right? So
Yeah.
I really think it'd be interesting for people to know a little bit of background on what inspired you to lead this pilgrimage to the Mary Magdalene sites in the south of France. And I had no idea until you and I had talked about it, about the mythology around her arrival in the south of France, and really the community that grew and built up around that particular narrative, and is still very active today. And then maybe talk about the places you go and what you did and all that kind of thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I love that we brought in the musical theater reference. Both Andre and I have theater backgrounds, so it seemed
Yes,
appropriate.
yes.
Yeah, so Mary Magdalene was with me really from the beginning of my journey to the goddess, my awakening to the goddess path, I would say. I mean, it really began in India, but it expanded when I came to know her, and when I really rooted into this question blossoming inside of me. What does where is the missing sacred feminine within the Christian tradition? And it was like I was really meditating on that inside of myself. And she came to me in a meditation, salute. She came to me in a meditation, oh, salute again. uh,
Everything's blooming. Yeah.
she came to me in a meditation, and I knew that she would be my guide and my guru guide on this quest to find the missing sacred feminine in the Christian tradition. And so I just was like voraciously reading everything I could about her. This is before I went to graduate school, so I didn't even kind of know what to read or how to read it.
Hmm.
And then eventually I came upon information about these pilgrimage sites in the south of France. And this was 2013 when I discovered that. So I went in 2014 on my own solo pilgrimage to the south of France to those sacred sites. I researched it and went by myself. And I was thinking about that this morning. Why did I go by myself instead of with a group? And, there was just something inside of me that longed to have that solo experience that wouldn't be, curated by somebody else
Yeah.
necessarily. Um, Anyway, so yeah, so the legend has it that after the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene and two other Marys, Mary Salome and Mary Jacobe, and then kind of depending on the legend that you're following, there's some others. They left on Joseph of Arimathea's boat. Maybe Saint Maximin was with them. Maybe Martha was with them. I mean, there's all these variations on who's with them, but we can confirmed that it was the three Marys, including the Magdalene, were on this boat in the Mediterranean, set adrift. There was no oar, there was no rudder. And so somehow they magically ended up on the shore of ancient France, which was then Gaul.
So God was the rudder, God was the oar, God was the sail. We get that. The divine.
Yes,
I,
yes.
absolutely. Wouldn't that be nice if we were all all like led that way through our path. But so where can people read this particular myth? Like where is this is not in the Bible. So where
Right.
is this that people can read this?
So this is a medieval legend, right? So
Okay.
Jacob of, I believe his last name is Borain. I think that's how it's pronounced. He wrote a whole, now, remember the course I taught for your Women's Wisdom
Yeah.
Village? I gave a link in there and I'll put it in the link here after we finish the talk today. So he created a list of the Vitas, the lives of all the saints. And so in the Middle Ages, 11th to 12th century, that's when he was collecting these stories and they were published. Mary Magdalene's was one of these lives of the saints. And so he took information from the Bible and then he took kind of he what's that word? Extrapolated. There we
Yeah.
go. Yep. Information from the Bible, but also stuff that had already been said about Mary Magdalene, kind of like circling around her by different popes and in the liturgical, whatever, in the legends, we'll say the church legends.
The rumor mill.
The
Yeah.
rumor mill, well, yeah, telephone, hey. He extracted information and then created the life of Mary Magdalene, the wealthy aristocratic woman who lived a life of, sin and debauchery previous to meeting Christ, and then her meeting of him and her, conversion that happened in that moment of meeting him and following him. And then, then we kind of get the more traditional biblical story, and he definitely sees her like the Mary and Martha sisters of Lazarus with
Yeah.
the brother that was resurrected. He definitely conflates Mary Magdalene with that Mary. Okay. So she's converted and she's a follower and maybe donating money to his ministry. And then afterward, we have all these legends of her ending up in ancient France and teaching the way of Christ, let's just say the way of love,
Yeah.
to the ancient, pagans, the pre-Christian pagans of
Yeah.
France, and
Yeah.
converting them,
Yeah.
and later we'll get to Saint Sarah. She was the first one to greet them on the shores of France, allegedly, according to the official legend. Um,
Can I ask you a quick question, which is a side
yeah,
note? So keep
yeah,
that in keep in mind where we were.
yeah,
Um, so this period of bringing together the medieval legends is also the time when of the troubadours and the beginning of the legend of the Grail quest, right? So all of these really great mythic tales are being basically collected and written about and during this period of time. So it was really a a
a mythic.
flowering of a new consciousness in the sense spiritually in the idea of the birth of the idea of romantic love as opposed to love as a business contract. So there was a lot of really rich mythic imagination going on at this time, right?
Yeah, there was. So you have that happening, at the kind of aristocratic level. And you have what's also happening is something like economically and politically, which the troubadours that was also an economic and a political ties to that as well. But basically, like all of a sudden, you have all these churches around Europe that are claiming to have these relics, these body
Relics,
parts
yeah.
of saints, right? And what happens is it brings prestige to their village. It brings money because then all of a sudden there's these pilgrimages that are happening to all of these sacred sites around Europe, these churches, right? So it brings prestige to the not the mayor, but the overlord of that village, or the one that's
The
kind of
deacon or the
yeah,
bishop or whoever it is,
not
yeah.
just not just the religious figure, but also the political figure, because they're a lot of the times discovering these relics
Yeah.
or funding,
Yeah.
um, the fanfare around it so that they can get, and it would look good on their kind of political resume, or maybe look
What?
good on them
Politics and religion working together?
yeah,
Never.
yeah, exactly. And so all of a sudden, so like, you have, so that's why you have, if you read Cynthia Bourgeault's book, The Meaning of Mary Magdalene, she discusses kind of this rivalry between this church in Vézelay and I believe it's, I can't remember if it's La Saint Baume or it's Saint Maximin, anywhere where there was this rivalry in who actually held this particular relic of Mary Magdalene, right? And so So you see that there's like political and economic reasons for why all of a sudden all of these relics are being discovered around France, because it brings a lot of money to those villages and prestige to those places, right? So in this time frame, we start to see churches say that they have this relic of Mary Magdalene at the cave in La Saint Baume. They have I forget what it is right now. I think it's some part of your arm. And then in Saint Maximin, they have her head, the famous yeah, they have her skull. I mean, it's encased in this beautiful golden helmet and behind this, locked gate. And it's a really powerful experience to go down there into the crypt and be beheld by, what I see as Mary Magdalene as the queen of the underworld. That's the archetype that gets constellated there.
Yeah.
So you meet this queenly figure. Um, and so Okay, so back to the legend for a moment. So she gets to France. She, is allegedly welcomed by the, inhabitants and converts them to this way of Christ. And then she spends the last 30 years of her life in this cave in La Saint Baume, which is one of the major players in the pilgrimage route. Um, in deep contemplation. She's a renunciate in this mythology, right? She's a renunciate, so she's like doesn't wear any clothes. She's not eating, and so 7 times a day for the liturgical hours, she's lifted to heaven by angels and is sustained through spiritual food, through spiritual manna, and that's what keeps her going for 30 years until she's complete. Until she's complete with her physical journey. Um, so I lost my train of thought there. So that's kind of the arc of the story.
Mhm.
And I would say there's a big, not just as a spiritual pilgrim and spiritual teacher, that's a major through line of her archetype there. But I would say there's a meta narrative. There's a meta evolution of the spiritualization of the soul, the self-realization of the soul.
Mhm.
I see in the legends of Mary Magdalene there. So that's a meta narrative for like someone who's an
Yeah.
esoteric seeker, right? So, but you asked me why I went, and there was some drive, some fire inside of me to understand this woman who represented this beacon of the sacred feminine for me in the Christian tradition, something that resonated a lot more for me than Mother Mary, as I think she does for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I came to see through the pilgrimage experience my journey inside of her journey, that it's like going on journey to her sacred sites to find the real Mary Magdalene at some point stopped being actually about Mary Magdalene, and it started to be, I could see that it was actually about me. It was about my journey to understand what it means to be a woman in a culture or a world culture basically that has very little limited understanding of what it means to be a woman, a very patriarchal view, where traditionally our roles have been stymied and our agency has been stymied, and the meaning that we've attributed to women and the loss of a sacred feminine and what it means to what is a sacred feminine, right? And how can Mary Magdalene fulfill that role if we see her in the role of the sacred feminine? And what is that reflection inside of me? What does it mean what is the absence of a divine feminine image
Yeah.
psychologically for us and spiritually, and what would it mean to reinstate that? So that's all been part of the journey, even if I didn't realize that at first.
Yeah. So let me ask you, can I ask you a couple other questions?
Yeah.
So when you first went on your first solo personal pilgrimage,
Yeah.
had you read or did you know about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene? Had that been discovered and
By
basically,
me. Yeah.
looked at by scholars and those sorts of things, or has that played at all into your ongoing self-discovery, like looking at
Oh,
her as a favored disciple from that particular what would we call Gnostic gospel, I guess.
yeah, I would say because I was introduced more to that spiritual side of Mary Magdalene first. Kind of that's actually how I came. I didn't really know who she was really before my meeting her in a meditation. I kind of knew like the role, like I knew she was in the biblical story, but I didn't really know anything about her.
Yeah.
Um, like the church that I grew up in, like maybe she was mentioned as a prostitute, but they didn't even talk about her at the foot of the cross because it was so Jesus centric.
Yeah.
So she was completely absent. So that was my relationship with the feminine, was the absence of the feminine within
Yeah.
those traditions. So for me, it was like a remembering an integration of the feminine within the biblical story and also within the divine feminine, like as a
Yeah.
play as a representative of the divine feminine. So the role, I think I was very influenced early on by Jean Yves Leloup's translation of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which is very esoteric, and he takes you into the meaning of the ancient Greek. And he's a mystic himself. So that really colored everything for me and how I understood it and how I approached Mary Magdalene when I went on pilgrimage,
Yeah.
especially to the cave, because inside the cave, there's all, and I wasn't a mythologist yet. I wasn't an archetypalist. I wasn't a mythologist. So my first encounter was really about just the experiential.
Yeah.
It was
And
really about the
it's
experience.
so interesting that that your quest, personal quest, if we can call it that, right?
Yeah.
And your experience then eventually led you to go to grad school and study mythology and do and write the book that's coming out in November and do all, not on Mary Magdalene, but on feminine uh spirituality and feminine divinity. And so this was really in the,
Foundational.
yeah, in the sense of the quest or your heroine's journey, this was like the call, right? This was like
It,
the
it
call.
it really was. I mean, it started in India, and then the India triggered this, but this was like the acceptance of the call.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, like I'm really curious, I'm really curious, I'm really curious. Now I'm on the journey. But at the end of the Mary Magdalene pilgrimage, when I realized that it wasn't really about her, that it was about me, my own self-discovery, and this question began to arise in my psyche at the end of the quest, which was, what does it mean to be a woman outside of patriarchal enculturation, and how would I know? And so for me, Mary Magdalene was clearly my guide on that quest to rediscover womanhood, both human womanhood, but also divine
Yeah.
feminine, aspects of extraordinary womanhood, I would call it, or all these, the potential divine qualities of the feminine.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was foundation to the quest, and I think if I may speak to, I've been on the pilgrimage 3 times. Okay, so I took 10-year hiatus. I took 2 friends last year, and then I took 2 people this year on quest. And everybody's experience so far has changed something deep inside their soul. It's not something you can put words to. It's
Yeah.
something that can only be experienced when you're inside the sacred space. Because I will tell you, for example, at this cave in Los St. Baume, which you have to hike up to, it's like a 40-minute walk from the base of the forest up. And it's, the caretakers are the Dominican brothers. Okay. When you hike up to this cave, and it's clearly sacred, and it's clearly sacred even pre-Christian times. Okay. Like they believe it might have been a site for a fertility goddess prior to Mary Magdalene worship there. Okay. You feel the devotion of all of the people who love Mary Magdalene, who love her relationship to Christ, whether that's sexual or more, agape,
Yeah.
beloved to the lover, lover beloved, or devotee to the deity, right? Um, and you feel so ensconced in this feminine, divine feminine womb inside this cave that's just pulsating with this higher octave of love. And there's like no other way of describing it for me than that. And you enter this liminal space, and she speaks to your heart. Like it shifts something inside of you. And you experience love on a level that's not human. No, and
Sounds,
everybody has said
sounds
something.
amazing.
Yeah, everybody has said something in their own way to me as reflecting that kind of
Yeah.
language. That's my language.
Yeah. Yeah, the exciting thing is that you lead the pilgrimage every year, and so there's an opportunity for people to join you, even though, I mean, there's people could find your email and send, from the show notes and send you, an interest thing. I know you haven't released information on next year yet, but
Yeah, the dates are
um,
not settled yet, but
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it sounds so powerful. I know I was trying to go with you this year. But it didn't work out. So maybe I'll get a chance to join you in that next year. But yeah, I mean, so now I know that part of what goes on in the pilgrimage that you lead, but it's also part of the legend or mythic narrative is the Saint Sarah, and some people say what she was the daughter of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, and some people say she was the person who greeted them when they landed. Can you tell us a little bit about that part?
Yeah, there's at least three versions. Um, the official legend is that she, as part of that Jacob Borain's legend,
Yeah.
um, and certainly the one that the church would be most willing to accept, is that Saint Sarah was an inhabitant of ancient Gaul, of ancient France, Gaul, and she was the first one to welcome the three Marys when they came ashore. Probably as part of the legend, she was the first convert to Christianity. Um, Now the interesting thing is she's dark skinned. Okay, so I put her in the Black Madonna tradition,
Yeah.
which is also a little bit of a interesting nebulous category. Like let's put that aside for a minute, the Black Madonna category. So the other version of the legend, which I think most people prefer to connect with, is that she may have been the secret daughter of Mary and Jesus. And so perhaps Mary Magdalene was pregnant with her when she fled the south of France. A third variation is actually that the Marys stopped in Egypt, in Alexandria, on the way before they got to France, and that Sarah was Egyptian, um, which is interesting because she's the matron saint of the Romani people, the Gypsies. And we say Romani, that's the proper terminology that they prefer to use. Gypsy is more of a derogatory term. Um, and they are of Indian origin, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and then migrated, out of India into, eventually into Europe, and assimilating a lot of different cultural elements along the way. And so as the matron saint of the Romani people, she is dark-skinned, um, queen. I mean, she's like bejeweled and bedazzled every year in some kind of different, queenly attire, crowns. This year she had three crowns. Very colorful, very reflective of the colorful nature of the flamenco gypsy culture. And they identify her with Kali, with the Hindu Kali.
Okay.
So that's why sometimes you'll see her name Sara-la-Kali. So we know Kali is the goddess of destruction and really regeneration, transformation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great things to say about Kali, but she's aligned with Shiva in that aspect of destructor goddess, but also the great mother, but the benevolent mother for those who worship her, even though she's fearsome. So it's interesting that Sarah is identified with Kali in that respect, but it helps us understand that Indian connection as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've read somewhere that they've only been that particular feast day for Saint Sarah that happens on May 24th. That's part of the pilgrimage experience. So the feast day is the day that she's honored. And so that's only been happening for the last 200 to 300 years. Like they've only been able to record it that far. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's identified with the Romani in that way. So I guess I was connecting that to the Egypt part, right? Because there's some relationship between the word gypsy and Egyptian.
Oh.
Okay, so like etymologically.
Yeah.
So it also makes sense that maybe the Marys would have gone to Egypt. And my friend, Dr. Joanna, who we've had on the show, I've had her on the show previously, and then you and I have talked to her in the past. In her book on Mary Magdalene, she puts forth her theory that Mary Magdalene first went to Egypt and Alexandria because it was like the cultural hub of the world.
Yeah.
And, some of the Gnostic texts that we have found are from Egypt.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that maybe she would have gone there. Maybe that's where Saint Sarah was from if she wasn't the daughter of Jesus and Mary. Now, the other interesting thing is on the west side of France, where kind of the troubadour legends are more prevalent, there was also the Cathars. And the Cathars carried forth a different brand of Christianity. They were persecuted by the White Knights. What were they called? The
The
Crusades.
yeah, the
Knights Templar.
Knights Templar, yeah, right.
Yeah, they were crucified by the church and the Knights Templar, um, because they had a heretical version of Christianity, allegedly. Now they believed that Mary and Jesus were married or were together, but allegedly, they didn't give Mary Magdalene equal co-status. They kind of saw her as his concubine. Um, but I think they, if I remember correctly, they did believe that they had a child, maybe. And they also had a lot of these purity impurity beliefs, and that actually, like, the higher adepts of the tradition were renunciates.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like giving you all the history
Yeah,
here, which
yeah,
you don't
no,
need
it's
all the
it's
history.
interesting. It's interesting to see where all this is situated in kind of in the history of this religious consciousness and Christianity and Mary Magdalene. I mean, it brings me forward to Dan Brown's novel talking about, I forget what the name of it is, the one where it's about Mary Magdalene and
DaVinci Code. Yeah.
yeah, and the one where she's the last surviving blood relative of the Sangreal, the bloodline of Christ, right? So yeah,
Yeah. And we should say that he got a lot of those ideas from Margaret Starbird, who wrote the Woman with the Alabaster Jar.
yeah.
I don't know, she doesn't get credited enough with that. And also, there were some other books that he drew some of those ideas from. So, yeah, it is interesting. Like, I somebody else said something on here about yes, everybody should go to India. I have been 3 times. It's also transformational. And you can see also some of the ways in which Christianity has absorbed, at least mythologically and archetypally, ideas from India. I will say that. Yes, India, go. India is transformational too. Um, so yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I went down that track. But yeah, all of these legends are coalescing. And, even in the Eastern tradition, one of the things I had wanted to do when I lived in Greece, maybe we'll be living there again eventually, don't know, going back and forth.
Yeah, so
Um,
let's put some good energy into that.
yeah, I had a little roadblock, so I left for a while. Um, One of the things I wanted to understand was the Eastern Church's perspective on Mary Magdalene, and I wanted to learn ancient Greek so that I could read some of the text. I haven't gotten to that point, but I do know that they don't have as part of their tradition Mary Magdalene going to France. That's not part of their belief. Their belief, as far as I understand it, is that Mother Mary went to Ephesus, Turkey, um, and that Mary Magdalene accompanied her there. So Mary Magdalene, according to those traditions, likely ended up in Turkey. Maybe she even went further east,
Yeah.
you know? So we have to understand that these are all traditions that have um, socio-political and spiritual and symbolic meanings. We don't know the truth, and we probably never will.
Yeah.
Um, and at one point for me, I just came to the point where I was like, it doesn't actually matter to me if Mary Magdalene was ever in France, because I feel her presence when I go to these places. And I feel the love that her devotees have for her, and they bring her to these places.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't need to have been there in physical form because her spiritual presence is there. And
Yeah,
that's
I
what we're
mean, I think
seeking.
when you have that many devotees calling on uh whatever you want to think of it as, a soul, a saint, a spiritual principle, a vibratory frequency, a ascended master, whatever names people give give to their devotional practices, right? I think
Yeah.
when you invoke that energy frequently enough over hundreds and hundreds of years, I think it becomes a sacred site that grounds that energy to that place.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's really what people are, and that's actually more interesting anyway, the archetypal field, like what gets held in the land. And this is, I wish we had Dr. Nicola here with us, and she's really good about talking about,
Yeah.
the energy of the land, the ancestors in the land, the, archetypal presences of the gods and goddesses in the
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I feel like I'm connecting to when
Yeah.
I'm at her sacred sites.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that in talking about the festival of Saint Sarah, which you incorporate into the pilgrimage, is that they actually bring the statue out, and the statue is dressed and, like you said, bedecked and multiple crowns, and she's actually carried through the streets and carried out into the water. Like she's carried out, and there were thousands of people. I mean, the photos that you have from that, which hopefully you can put together a little, video and put it on YouTube so people can watch it.
I put one up this morning, a little
You did?
reel.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
And that and how much joy and celebration, right, is going on in that town around the idea of celebrating this female saint, this Black Madonna, this representation of the sacred feminine. It's really astounding.
It's that's a really good point because okay, first a couple things. When you were speaking, I was like, yeah, it's like she's being rebaptized every year, born again. Like she's
Oh,
literally coming out of the womb of the crypt, right?
yep.
And that it's so warm down there because all the candles are lit and it's really hot. So you really do feel like you're entering a moist room like environment when you go to greet the Black Madonna, Saint Sarah, in her crypt, in her womb tomb crypt. And then she's rebirthed out of the crypt, processed through the street with thousands of people, and then practically, not fully, dipped into the Mediterranean, baptized, purified, rebirthed. You have all of this mythological symbolism happening, enacted. Um, but the other interesting thing I came to see this year is that you have a mixture of traditions happening. So you have the flamenco, Romani tradition happening, with a little bit of kind of in Indian influence in there. You have the Catholic influence happening, all within the same procession, right? And then the particular local French tradition happening, right? So these are all commingling as part of the tradition of Saint Sarah, in the singing that's happening, and that's all happening at once, right? In the procession itself, in the attire that people are wearing, this kind of like 19th century Victorian. I don't even know what it is. It looks like Victorian attire, but they're pretending that it was from the,
Yeah.
first century. Um, white horses. So you're really all this beautiful coalescing of multiple traditions somehow happening together to honor Saint Sarah.
I know it's like a syncretism of all these different cultural ideas and mythologies and traditions, all worshiping, if you will, or
Yeah,
celebrating the sacred feminine.
yeah, exactly. And exactly. And it's really beautiful in that way, really powerful. I will say I overheard someone say last year, she was Indian or like ethnically or Indian. I don't know if she was born there, but her ancestry definitely. I overheard her say like the difference between how she was experiencing the Saint Sarah pilgrimage versus what you experience in India, which is a little bit more like chaotic and lively. And the Saint Sarah pilgrimage sometimes feels a little bit solemn, depending on where you're located in the procession.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
makes
yeah.
sense. If
Yep.
you're in the more like Catholic side of the procession, and it might just be that the people that are processing through the street, um, because they're not necessarily regular worshipers,
Yeah.
they don't know how to celebrate it fully in the
Yeah.
tradition. But
Yeah.
if you're near the people that are like singing and playing flamenco and singing the Sarah, then you're in the more lively part of the procession.
Right.
So it's really interesting. Yeah, and depending on where you end up, like I have walked in the procession and followed her all the way in. I've ended up in the ocean and watched her be dipped in. The first time I went, I was lucky enough, something came over me and she was crossing really close to me with, there's a bunch of people like holding her on the board and carrying her through the beach. And something came over me and I reached out my hand to touch her and one of the pilgrims grabbed my hand and put it on her statue. And it was like this transmission, of sacred feminine power. And I fell to my knees crying. But, so I've experienced that procession from a lot of different angles. And so it's never going to be the same experience twice. It's
Yeah.
always
And it's so interesting because the pilgrimage itself, from as you're describing it, starts out in the quest of, right? Look, going to all the sacred places that you take people. And then at the end, it ends up with this actual festival, celebration, living tradition, right? So it really has, it builds, right? It builds to that
Yeah.
Saint Sarah celebration.
And I want to say something else because Aisha is in here and I met Aisha. She's in our chat right now and I met her on the pilgrimage. Okay. So I want to tell this story. Hello, dear. I was hoping you'd jump on today. Um, and so one of the extraordinary things that has happened each time I've done this pilgrimage are the people that I've met. Okay. So I've told ad nauseum in my blogs about the people I met the first time. But this time it was like I encountered many people from Brazil. It was really interesting. And this really eccentric lady from Italy. But I was at the monastery, had these deep, soulful, my group had these deep, soulful conversations with this guy, Marcos, from Brazil. And then the day of the Saint Sarah procession, so a couple days later, um, I was standing far away from the church on the procession route, okay, at the front. And as Saint Sarah is passing me, and I'm telling you, thousands of people, okay, somebody says, Annalisa. And I was like, do I know you? And she
God is talking to
I
me.
know, I know. I was like, yes. And she was like, I follow you on Instagram. This is so incredible to see you here. It was so fast. I don't remember exactly. And I was like, oh my God, message me so we can connect. And it was this beautiful, connection of two souls devoted to the Magdalene. And as it would turn out, the next day, I was at a hotel in Arles, about 30 minutes away, and I walked down to the reception, and there she is. She was staying in the same hotel as me. And I was like, it's meant to be. We have to have dinner. And so we had this beautiful connection and shared all of our insights. And she's been, following the YouTube channel for a while. And the point is that Mary brings us together. Okay. She brings like-minded souls together. This is something you experience on pilgrimage generally, wherever it is, whoever you're devoted to. But it's like if this agape love were like this, central force, she's like bringing all of us souls together to meet, to converge, to lighten our path together. And it's just this constant, for me, this constant feeling of love. I don't know how to say it other than that, but there's like this heart opening um that brings you into connection with so many beautiful events and people. And so yeah, I think that's one of the most beautiful experiences that happens on this particular pilgrimage, or the people that you meet
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the heart opening connections that you create with them. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems that in our ever more digitalized world, right? The the interpersonal connections and the deep soul experiences that we share in person, right?
Hmm.
Together become even more important, more powerful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And reconfirming of our human experience and why we're here.
Yeah.
I also saw Zeph on here, and I wanted to acknowledge him to everyone else here. The Black Madonna, some believe, is an aspect of Aphrodite. The symbolism of the goddess runs through the centuries of the same. Are you referring to that one book? Oh my God. I think it's called Black Athena. Oh no, that's a different, not Aphrodite. Yeah, the Black Madonna traditions. I mean, I have some friends and colleagues in the field uh, that are scholars of the Black Madonna. I haven't ventured too far into that world, but yeah, some connect it back to African goddesses. Others just see them as representation, not just, but see them as representations of, the earth, maybe the underworld, just different aspects of the same feminine figure. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to share about Black Madonnas, Andrea.
Um, that was not one of my specialties or one of my deep fields of study.
Yeah.
In terms of how we talked about it in grad school was really in connection to the underworld, right? In
Yeah.
connection to the shadow of the self, if you want to look at at depth psychologically.
Yeah, but not shadow in a bad way. It's
No,
like
no,
the
no,
the,
no.
the suppressed part of the feminine.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
shadow's such a buzzword. I should have used something else, but
I no,
um,
it's like one
yeah,
of those things where people associate shadow just with bad, the
yeah,
bad
yeah,
qualities.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So, and one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit regarding like Mary Magdalene and her place in in the Bible, or her place in medieval literature, or the place of women, right? For instance, if we look at the New Testament, I'm always so surprised. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but it always, I guess, continues to disappoint me every time I think about it. That when you read in in the New Testament, right, there are really strong references if you look at them uh, in a sense, well, depth psychologically, metaphorically, scripturally, where before Jesus turned the water into wine, he talked to his mother about it. He says,
Mm,
I think I'm ready to do this, right? He tells Mary, right? The first person he revealed himself to as the Christ, right, was the woman at the well,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, looking then again at the only people who stayed at the foot of the cross, who didn't run away and betray him at the end, were women.
Mm-hmm.
And the one who he revealed himself to as the risen Christ in the scriptures was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the beginning of his ministry. Both of the first ones are the beginning of his ministry, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the trauma and the trial and then the resurrection. These are all witnessed and held by women representing, I think, the divine feminine, right?
Yeah.
The active feminine principle. And I've never heard one pastor talk about it in that way. Never.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not spending a lot of time listening to what pastors are saying or aren't
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah,
I will say that. So I don't I don't really know what they're saying. But I imagine if they were talking about that in any shape or form that we would have heard about it. It would
yeah,
have come across our feed.
yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I mean,
Well,
I tend to go ahead.
I was going to say, well, and then of course the church, the Catholic Church was the one that branded Mary Magdalene a prostitute, and then just recently said, "Whoops, whoops, sorry, she wasn't a prostitute. Sorry,
Yeah,
let's set the record straight on that." So,
yeah, exactly. It was the 6th century Pope Gregory the Great in his
yeah,
homily. Karen King, describes how that whole thing happened in her book on Mary Magdalene. She was one of the, I think, early translators of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, or at least one of the authorities on it in English. Um, so yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, we can look at Mary Magdalene through a historical lens and the whole story. We can look at it through a religious lens, and or we can look at it through an archetypal mythological lens.
yeah,
And I am at this point mostly compelled by the archetypal and mythological
yeah,
because that's, as you and I know, how we make meaning,
yeah, yeah,
of our sacred figures and in our daily lives, right? I read a really interesting book early on in my journey that also really kind of helped me get to that point. Author's name, book name, cannot remember. But basically, his book was arguing, trying to make a case for whether or not Jesus had a wife. And his case for and against were both compelling. Okay, like his case for was like, okay, if he was a rabbi, he would have been betrothed, and you couldn't be called a rabbi unless you were betrothed. And and usually it was like girls really young were married to men twice their age. That was just the thing back in those days. And so he was like, it probably wouldn't have been Mary Magdalene for X, Y, and Z reasons, but he probably would have been married. Now, on the other hand, he was a radical, a hippie, and he flouted all of the traditional rabbinical laws. So maybe he wasn't married, maybe he was an ascetic, because I think part of the traditional Judaism is if you're going to be a rabbi, you also need to be fruitful and multiply. You need to have children. So he was flouting those laws. Um, Maybe he was a libertine. I mean, like rejecting traditional rabbinical, uh, priesthood
traditions. Yeah,
traditions. Yeah. Um, that could have looked like anything. We don't know, but like that was the case against. And then his final conclusion was, what's most interesting is why we need him to be married today. What it says about us and our need for our God to have a feminine figure by his side, whether
Yeah.
that's a human woman or divine feminine woman, and how it reflects our own time and place in history where we're looking for, complementarism or egalitarianism in our own male-female balance. And so I'm getting shivers just saying that. So for me, that's the archetypal feminine coming in there, right? And it's like we're now in this stage where we're ready, not just ready, we're necessitating. We're saying we cannot go forward unless we make room to, resurrect and bring the sacred feminine back into balance with a healthy sacred masculine, which I think the real Jesus, we could all say from his teachings, the real Jesus was a representation of that sacred masculine power. And I just want to say, I don't believe Jesus was an actual deity. I believe he was like a Buddha, like a fully realized being and a master teacher, and that he was teaching all of us how to, reach the God consciousness within, God, goddess consciousness within. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
off
Yeah.
my little soapbox.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I just, um, yet in terms of biblical scholarship and meaning and translations, and I mean, people argue about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, and will never be able to prove, this was a fact, that was a fact. Well, we think because of this, this, and this, and this, that this is true. Um, antiquity is antiquity. And like we know, you know, ideas and myths and stories and things get passed down, but the essential truth, right, of the teaching, or the essential truth at the heart of it, right, is what myth speaks to, right,
Yeah.
and how we make meaning with it, how we use it um to live our best and most fulfilled and activated and empowered lives, right? That therein lies the depth and archetypal psychology of being able to, um, incorporate these spiritual ideas into the way one lives one's life, right?
Exactly. And so I think like with the resurgence of Mary Magdalene in our cultural psyche right now, and you and I have talked about this, it's like in conjunction with the rise of the modern feminist movement, the discovery of ancient Sumar and God and powerful goddesses like Inanna, Çatalhöyük, and now we know that Çatalhöyük in Turkey was a probably matriarchal goddess worshiping society, and I know you have other things on that list. Um, but oh my God, I like got myself distracted from I distracted myself from my main point. But the point is that, oh, Mary Magdalene as an every woman.
Yeah.
So her presence now, historically, her resurgence into our consciousness and the reframing of who she was historically as a spiritual teacher, authority, maybe some kind of beloved of Christ, whether that's wife or just most adept
Yeah.
spiritual student and or co-teacher, whatever, is that she, for me, represents mythologically and archetypally this every woman aspect, right?
Yes,
Where
it's an
she,
open invitation. It's an open
yes,
invitation.
we
Yeah.
can see ourselves inside of every different aspect of her. Like she shows up for us in the way that we're looking for healing or recognition or a mirror. And that's really the beauty. So for me, it all started out with, again, as I started this podcast today, what does it mean to be a woman outside of patriarchal enculturation, and looking at the way that women have been shamed sexually, have been seen as inferior to men spiritually, because of our feminine power and to create life. Traditionally, the patriarchy, so that I'm not blaming men entirely, but the patriarchy has projected its own fears of feminine sexuality onto women, to say that women are the ones that are sexually deviant, when really it's, certain men that don't have control over their own sexual desire, you know, and the way to delegitimize women's power and authority in the church, in the beginning and then through time and throughout society. So we know that it's done a lot of damage to women, literally to women, and also psychologically to women and men, in the way that we're taught to see women as, from man's rib. And I know everyone watching probably knows all this, but it's worth saying out loud. It's worth reiterating out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it sounds like you had once again a really an amazing journey and a wonderful time. And I I loved looking at all of the photos that you shared with me, right?
Yeah.
Regarding, all aspects of it, the beauty of where the cave is in St. Baume, the beauty of the forest. I mean, the surrounding countryside is absolutely beautiful. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to take that trip with you at
I
some,
know.
yeah, in the next couple of years. That would be definitely awesome. And you traditionally go in May, right?
Yeah, we go in May. And I also want to just speak really quickly. If anybody in the audience has questions that they want to pose to us, now would be the time before we start to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we go in May because the feast day for Saint Sarah is May 24th.
Okay.
So yeah, I designed the pilgrimage around that time frame. And then we also go to Arles. We went to Arles both years, actually, this year and last year, which is a town about 30 minutes, the main town outside of Les Saintes Marie de la Mer, for the Saint Sarah Festival. And it's very artistic. There's a lot of ancient Roman architecture there. It's very sophisticated and charming. And Van Gogh spent the last several years of his life there, so you can go and see like the places that inspired some of his paintings. The food's great, and they also have a strong connection to Saint Sarah there. Um, so yeah, the pilgrimage, we're really getting like a full experience, really, of the French culture and the French culture in relationship to the Mary Magdalene tradition there. And then you also get to experience both the livelihood and the festivities and the devotion of Saint Sarah and the procession, and then the more deeply contemplative aspect of Mary Magdalene in the hills of Provence. And then also that third spot, which is down into the crypt in Saint Maximin, where you meet Mary Magdalene's skull. That's also like it's not contemplative for me in the same way as Mary Magdalene in the hillside cave. It's a little bit more raw and wild for me, to be staring in the the skull, face to face with the skull.
That has a little bit more Kali vibe to it for
It
sure.
has
Yeah.
definitely does.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more disintegrative and raw and like, okay, I'm gonna be like, something's gonna be stripped away here, which is part of the tradition when you meet the queen of the underworld. In a
Yeah.
lot of traditions, you're letting go. There's an initiation of letting go in order to be reborn.
There's a question for you there.
Oh yeah, Zeph. Hi, Zeph. Pilgrimage next year around, oh, so for summer solstice would be ideal, I feel. Well, that is an idea. Maybe there'll be two. Annalisa, you mentioned that there are three faces or aspects of Mary. Is this the triple goddess that the early Christian Gnostics venerated? Hmm. Well, I don't remember what I said about the three faces or aspects of Mary. Um, um, but hell, why not? I mean, I really see that there's like infinite faces of Mary Magdalene. Oh, I know what you're talking about, because there were three Marys that ended up on the shore of ancient France. So
Yeah.
that brings about the triple goddess, triple Mary vibe. Um, and I think that we can project into that in many different ways, because the Bible only briefly mentions Mary Salome and Mary Jacobee. Um, so I think that's a question of curiosity and play, and maybe it does have something to do with Gnosticism. Let's circle back to that, Zeph. Let's do our research and circle back to that and reconvene on that question. Thank you. That's a brilliant question. I don't know the answer other
That's
than,
interesting because
yeah.
in the past I'd studied some of the Nag Hammadi and some of the Gnostic Gospels,
Mhm.
Fragments of a Faith Forgotten, a lot of those things, and I don't remember ever coming across a triple goddess, although there is in in the Pista Sophia there is a triple faced power,
Mm,
certainly the lion faced power that
mhm.
Pista Sophia when she when she's deceived and falls into the lower realms has to
Right.
face. But um, I'm not sure if that's quite the same as the triple goddess. But I may be off the mark from what the questioner was asking. Not exactly.
No, I think more traditionally they have that Neoplatonic thing going on. That's what I've read, where you have the as above, so below.
Mhm.
So there's more of a doubling of the celestial and the earthly terrestrial aspects of the Christ, of the Marys,
Mhm.
of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. So I think that's more a part of their tradition than the triple aspect.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't count it out because clearly there's a reason in the mythology that there is a triple Mary landing on the shores of ancient France. There is a reason for that. And I think it's worth sitting with
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing uh,
Yeah.
everything about your trip and about the pilgrimage, which many of us hope will be able to join you next
Yeah.
year. I'll have to start saving my shekels.
Yeah.
One exciting thing that I'm just going to share is that you and I were able to actually have a dinner together. We were actually in the same geographic spot last night, and started kicking around ideas and planning an itinerary for a fall 2007 Greek goddess tour. So keep that in the back of your minds, folks out there, because we're we're in the beginning stages of planning that too. So
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, yeah. Ideally, we would be doing one Mary Magdalene pilgrimage a year and one to Greece, to the Greek goddess sites.
yeah.
Maybe two to Mary Magdalene. We'll see. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. Just stay tuned, everybody, and thank you so much for coming and sharing. And I hope we got to most of your comments and questions. And I forgot to say about Aisha. I don't even know if she's on anymore, that she's writing her PhD on Mary Magdalene
Oh, awesome.
and this musical aspect, which I won't go into because I don't have, I didn't get permission to share it. So I just want to say, that was another exciting point for our coming together, was hearing about her project. So and I invited her in the future to come on and share about it. So
That'd
hopefully
be
that will
awesome.
happen.
Yeah, we'd
Yeah.
love to talk to you about it. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Annalisa, and we'll see everybody next week. Don't forget to comment, like, share, star, ding, ring, whatever other you do on
Comment.
YouTube.
And yeah, I'll put the links up for the next year's pilgrimage, even though I don't have the dates yet. The link will go in the YouTube text box here soon
Yeah.
today. Okay. All
All
right. Thanks,
right.
everybody. It's been a pleasure. Thanks,
Yep.
Andrea.
Thanks,
Okay.
Annalisa. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Oops. Oh, I forgot how to.